Hi guys, this is Junaidili Hadri and you're watching English Language Education. Welcome guys my this YouTube channel. So guys, in the previous lecture we have discussed about structure wise sentences. We have discussed about simple sentences and compound sentences. So guys, this lecture is very important for those people who are going to be appear in any test like IELTS, like any other test like CSS, PSC, any other test. So guys, in this lecture I'm going to discuss about complex sentences and compound complex sentences, because in the previous lecture I have discussed about simple sentences and compound sentences. Okay, so I will give the link of this video in description. You have to watch this video, in because this video is also connected with this lecture, this next lecture. Okay, so guys, before starting my lecture, if you haven't subscribed my channel, then you should subscribe and hit the notification button of channel to get my lecture as I will upload. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to start. So guys, the third and important sentence is complex sentences. Complex sentences are very useful for those people who are going to be appear in CSS and IELTS tests, because in writing model these kind of complex sentences are written, the writing will be more effective. So guys, first of all I'm going to define complex sentences, what actually complex sentences are. So then I will give some examples of complex sentences. So guys, I'm going to give definition. A sentence that contains one independent clause and one dependent clause, that is called complex sentence. One thing memorize: one independent clause and one dependent clause, that is called complex sentences. Okay, I have described very well about clause, so I will also give the link of this clause lecture about clause in description. You have to watch that video. That video very helpful for that video will help to understand this lecture, because this lecture is totally connected with the clause plays the main important role in this lecture. So I told you about that one independent clause and one dependent clause contains complex sentences, makes complex sentences. So now I'm going to give examples. So the patient had died before the doctor came. The patient had died before the doctor came. The patient had died is an independent clause because it expresses complete thought, so that's why it is an independent clause. I told you about that. You have to watch that video that is related to clauses, that helps you to understand this lecture. So independent means the clause that express complete thought, that is called independent clause. So this clause is expressing complete thought, that's why it is called independent clause. And before the doctor came doesn't express complete thought if we can't take this sentence in with before the doctor came. So before the doctor came is dependent clause. Okay, before the doctor came is dependent clause. The clause which doesn't express complete thought, complete sentence, that is called dependent clause. One thing I will also clear: whensoever a clause begins with the word before, that is called dependent clause. Whensoever a clause begins with the word if, that is called dependent clause. When it begins with a whether, though, although, which, that, these all words when came at the beginning of sentence, that those clauses are considered as dependent clause. Okay, so now I'm going to give another example. If you work hard, you will succeed. If you work hard, you will succeed. If you work hard, I told you about when if comes at the beginning of clause, that is dependent clause, because it doesn't give complete. If you work hard, what will happen? You will succeed. So that's why it is a independent, because it's expressing complete thought, and it's a dependent clause. It is not expressing complete thought. So this is these are the examples about the complex sentences. Complex sentences means contains one independent and one dependent. So in this sentence, this is a dependent clause and this is a independent clause. In the next sentence, we are going to give another example of complex sentence. When we heat ice, when we heat ice, it melts. When we heat ice, it melts. It's a dependent and it's a independent. Okay, there are so many examples of complex sentences. As we can say that if we mix red and purple, we get blue, as like I think. And one thing more, the next type is compound complex sentences. Guys, this one is very important, very important for those people who are going to be in CSS, because these kind of sentences are studied in CSS level. So guys, and first of all I'm going to define what compound complex sentences are. Okay, a sentence that contains two independent clauses in one or more than one dependent clauses in one or more dependent clauses, that is called compound complex sentence. Okay, two independent clauses are must and one or more dependent clauses are must. It at least must three clauses, two independent and one dependent. So then it make a compound complex sentence. I have written about two examples about compound complex sentences. So guys, when she came, when she came, it's a dependent. Okay, it's a dependent clause. I was watching movie, it gives complete sense, so it's independent. And my brother was studying, it's a also independent. So these two are independent, which are joined by a coordinating conjunction. I told you about coordinating conjunction in this complex sentences, sorry, compound sentences, in my previous lecture. I will also give the link of that video in description. You have to watch that video. That will be really helpful for to understand this lecture, because you can understand this lecture easily through that video. Okay, when she came, it's dependent clause, one clause, and two are these. When these three clauses make one sentence, those that is considered as compound complex sentence. And the next one is, we won the match, but my uniform was muddy because it rained the entire time. We won the match, but my uniform was muddy because it rained the entire while. It is dependent clause and these both are independent clause. Okay, so we in this lecture we have discussed about complex and compound complex sentences. In the previous lecture we have discussed about simple sentence and compound sentences. Guys, one thing more is that is very important. In next lecture I will describe all four types about structure wise sentences. In the next lecture I will describe about clauses and compound and these all types, four types: one, simple, compound complex, and compound complex sentences. In next lecture I will describe each and every time type in one lecture. Okay, so you don't worry if you haven't understand this lecture, no problem. In the next lecture I will clear your confusion, but I will suggest one thing to you, that you have to watch videos about clause, because I have given some videos on my channel. I have uploaded some videos, because that videos are totally connected to this lecture, because this lecture is very important for those people who are going to be appearing in test. So guys, I again want to say you, because I'm spreading the knowledge of English language, so I have knowledge, so that's why I'm spreading. Otherwise, you know that no one can describe like sentences as I have described, because you know that if I don't have knowledge I will never describe as like I have described. So guys, I want to say you have to subscribe my channel, press the notification button to get my lecture as will I upload, and you have to share with those friends who are going to be learn English, because it helps to understand. And I'm going to provide the class free of course. You know that I'm not taking money from you, I'm providing free of course, so you have to learn from this channel. And thank you very much.